Welcome to History Crossroads, where past meets present, and every story reveals a new path through time. It's the bitter winter of 1941 on the frozen plains of the Eastern Front. The sky is overcast, heavy with storm clouds, casting a pale, eerie light across a wasteland of ruined buildings and broken bodies. Somewhere in this vast empty field, there's a young woman, motionless, cloaked in the dirt and shadows. Her rifle is aimed, her body still. She waits with patience that only one familiar with life and death can muster. And when the silence is broken by a single shot, it's too late for her target. For Lyudmila Pavlichenko, that shot means survival. For the enemy, it means the legend of Lady Death continues. Our story begins not on the battlefield, but in the quiet town of Bilazervka in Ukraine. Lyudmila Mikhailovna Pavlichenko was born in 1916, a time when the Russian Empire was on the brink of collapse. A restless spirit from the start, Lyudmila was known for her competitive drive and unbreakable will. When her family moved to Kiev, her passion for challenge only grew stronger. Picture young Lyudmila, still a teenager, standing in a dimly lit shooting range, her eyes narrowed, focusing intently on the distant target. The sounds of Kiev's bustling city life fade as she lines up her shot. Her breath stills, and then a shot echoes as she hits her mark with precision. Her competitive spirit drove her forward, entering amateur shooting competitions and surprising everyone, including herself, with her skill. This was no ordinary pastime for a young woman of her time, but for Lyudmila, it was a release, a test of self. Little did she know then, these abilities would shape the course of her life and the history of her country. By 1941, 24-year-old Lyudmila was studying history at Kiev University, imagining a future of classrooms and textbooks, unraveling the histories of empires and revolution. But history would soon ask something more of her. On June 22nd, the quiet she knew was shattered as Nazi forces launched a full-scale invasion. The sense of security she felt in Kiev crumbled with the first waves of air raids. Bombs rained down, and the city, once a place of study and ambition, became a war zone. With a new sense of duty, Lyudmila enlisted, though she was offered a nursing role. But that wasn't what she came for. Her competitive nature, her skill with the rifle, they hadn't brought her here to serve on the sidelines. I came here to kill the enemy, she declared, her voice unwavering. She would fight as a soldier. Lyudmila joined the 25th Rifle Division, a part of the Soviet Red Army, stationed on the front lines. Her mission took her to Odessa, where she would face an enemy she could hardly have imagined. The reality of war was far different than her competitions at the shooting range. Picture her, crouched low in the trenches, rifle in hand, breathing in the cold, damp air, the ground around her littered with debris. With each shot, she felt the weight of the moment. There was no room for doubt, no room for error. Her targets weren't just faceless enemies. Each one represented a threat to her country and to her comrades. Her legend grew as her accuracy and patience proved invaluable. She could wait for hours, even days, for the perfect moment to strike without moving a muscle. Her kill count rose, and whispers of her exploits spread among her fellow soldiers, as well as the German forces. For Lyudmila, each shot was a reminder of why she was there, a reminder that she was more than a statistic in this brutal war. The Battle of Sevastopol was a pivotal moment for Lyudmila. The siege was unrelenting, with German artillery pounding the city day and night. This was no ordinary battle. It was a test of endurance, both physically and mentally. For Lyudmila, it was also a time of reflection, a time when the lines between survival and duty blurred. Imagine her lying prone for hours on end, her body rigid with focus, her eyes trained on the horizon. She could go days without rest, barely moving, her fingers numb from the cold as she waited for the enemy to slip up. This was counter-sniping at its most intense. Both she and the enemy snipers knew what was at stake. One wrong move, and it was over. Her most intense duels were with other snipers. The silence was almost deafening, a silence only broken by the occasional gunshot echoing across the ruins. These encounters were battles of patience and nerve, tests of who could endure longer, and time and again it was Lyudmila who emerged victorious. In June 1942, Lyudmila was wounded by shrapnel, a piece of mortar embedding itself in her shoulder. She had given all she could to the front lines, and now the Soviet government had different plans. Her mission was no longer in the trenches, but on a diplomatic stage. She was sent to the United States as part of a Soviet effort to drum up support for the Allied cause. For Lyudmila, it was a different kind of battlefield. At the White House, she stood next to President Franklin D. Roosevelt and his wife Eleanor. The contrast was striking, her military uniform stark against the polished elegance of the White House. She was young, only 25, but the war had aged her, her eyes holding the weight of her experiences. At press conferences, she faced questions that were trivial compared to what she had seen. When asked if women should fight in battle, she famously shot back, "Gentlemen, I am 25 years old, and I have killed 309 fascist invaders. Don't you think, gentlemen, that you've been hiding behind my back for far too long?" Her words cut through the room, a reminder that war was no place for ignorance or underestimation. The American public was taken with her bravery, and Eleanor Roosevelt grew close to her, sensing the weight of her burden. To Lyudmila, this diplomatic mission was surreal, a world apart from the life she knew, yet a reminder that her sacrifices had a global impact. After the war, Lyudmila returned to Kiev to complete her studies. She became a historian, studying the battles of the past, but the war had left its mark. Friends and colleagues noticed the change. She was quieter, haunted by memories of comrades lost, the horrors of combat. She received the Hero of the Soviet Union and the Order of Lenin, symbols of her bravery. But these medals were small in comparison to the scars she carried. In her later years, she avoided talking about her time as a sniper, the memories too raw, too close. In 1974, she passed away, a national hero, yet one who had been profoundly shaped by war. Today, her sniper rifle is preserved in a museum, a symbol of her skill and sacrifice. Her legacy is immortalized in a statue in Kiev, a stoic figure standing guard over the city she once defended. Her story has inspired books, films, and countless tributes, a reminder of the resilience and courage of women in combat. To this day, Lyudmila Pavlichenko remains an enduring figure in military history, an example of skill, courage, and unyielding dedication. Her life reminds us that behind every statistic in war, there is a story, a face, and a soul. Lyudmila Pavlichenko's life is more than a statistic. She was a young woman thrown into a brutal war, one who faced the horrors of battle with an unmatched resolve. Her story reminds us of the true cost of war and the strength of the human spirit. If you were moved by today's story, subscribe to History Crossroads and leave a review to help us bring more stories of unsung heroes to light. Remember to share this episode with others who may be inspired by Lyudmila's story. Thank you for listening, and join us next time as we journey through history's forgotten corners.